Welcome back everybody to another episode of Direct Comparison. In today's episode, we're going to take a look at the recent port of Spider-Man 2 and see how this recent PC port stacks up to the original PlayStation 5 version of the game from a couple years ago. For today's video, the PC version is running at a 4K resolution, with the settings pushed as high as possible, including all the intensive ray tracing settings. Meanwhile, the PS5 version of the game is being played on the newer PlayStation 5 Pro, with the settings set to prefer fidelity. Like with many titles on the system, Spider-Man 2 on PS5 Pro benefits from PlayStation's new PSSR upscaling technique, which allows for far superior visual fidelity on supported titles over the base PS5, all while targeting an upscaled 4K resolution. And with settings like variable refresh rate, Spider-Man 2 runs beautifully on console, even with Insomniac's own ray tracing settings enabled. I also want to point out that this particular PC port has a plethora of technical problems currently. I've run into major memory leaks after letting the game run for a few minutes. I've also encountered some major texture bugs in some cases, that I believe is linked to things like frame generation. There's also some really distracting texture artifacting when zooming the camera in and out. For this reason, I would advise waiting on this title for the time being, though these issues will hopefully be addressed relatively soon, if not already. And finally, before we get started, be sure to subscribe to the channel for more direct comparison videos like this one, including my next comparison video on the upcoming Tomb Raider 4 through 6 remasters, that I'll be posting next week. Alright, so let's kick this comparison off by first taking a look at the quality of the character models. So right off the bat, the differences here are nearly non-existent. The texture quality and poly counts for Spider-Man are pretty consistent with one another, with a slight advantage going to the PC version for that tiny bit of extra clarity that we're getting from DLSS and DLAA over the upscaling and AA methods on the PS5 Pro. What really stands out though, and will become a consistent theme throughout the rest of this comparison video, is the addition of new ray trace reflections on the PC. You can already see this pretty clearly when you look at the brighter parts of Spider-Man's suit, like the white spider crest on his chest. The material here has a more shiny, reflective look than it does in the PS5 version. You'll also notice some improved specularity as well, which is most noticeable when viewing him at an angle. Then, again, when looking at his arms, we can see more of those reflective properties coming through even further, with some of the surrounding environment partially visible, including some of the red light from a nearby tail light. These new ray trace reflections are even more noticeable with Miles Morales' suit, that's far more reflective in general. Because of this, Miles seems to blend in a bit more naturally with the surrounding game world, with light seemingly bouncing off of him more accurately, and at different levels depending on the material. Like Peter's arms, the red shoulders and biceps demonstrate these reflections very nicely. You can almost make out the surrounding NPCs and emergency vehicles in this scene. Whereas before, the suit just had a generic global light reflection, and nothing more. Remarkably, NPCs seem to be benefiting here too. This fireman, for example, has actual ray trace reflections for his goggles and mask, whereas before, that reflection seems to be a general cube map. Alongside this, most NPCs have seen a large bump to their texture resolution, and in some cases, some small improvements to their facial structure, and new eyeballs with reflective properties. Other NPCs are more difficult to compare, as they seem to be randomly generated from an algorithm that swaps between different preset outfits and hundreds of different facial models. But when you do find matching clothing like this jean jacket here, it does look like it's made up of a higher resolution texture map this time, and the general shadowing seems to be improved as well. Now let's talk about the environments. Manhattan Island in Spider-Man 2, and the newer Brooklyn district are gorgeously crafted for the PS5, with an unprecedented amount of detail that contributes to one of the most realistic looking cities in a video game. Everything from the building facades, the ground textures, the interiors visible through the windows, and even just the windows themselves look phenomenal. And thankfully, this has not just been retained for the PC, but enhanced further. Texture maps for larger surfaces have seen their resolution scaled up, including roads, sidewalks, brick walls, and the like. Some textures have been replaced altogether, with much better quality texture maps like this one, that offers considerably more depth and complexity. LODs have also been extended a great deal, making classic shots like this one of the Manhattan Bridge even more impressive, with those distant details on the bridge now fully visible. Larger wide shots, like those when standing up high on a skyscraper, are greatly improved too, with much more detail rendering from further away, like this radio tower to the left of the Empire State Building that previously would not render from this distance. More intricate objects in the game world now sport higher res textures, and are sometimes enhanced by the addition of ray trace lighting effects, like this fountain in Central Park, that has much more accurate light and shadow casting than it did before. Not every object has been improved. Some objects appear to be identical between versions, though these particular objects that seem to match were already impressive before, and likely didn't need any further touch-ups. As for the more dynamic objects, I noticed a slight increase to things like traffic density and NPC crowd sizes, with larger groups of pedestrians on average. You'll even find NPCs coming in and out of buildings more frequently, possibly suggesting a faster spawn rate for these characters when the player is exploring the streets on foot. Next up, we have lighting. While the base lighting for the game appears to be untouched, there is still a noticeable difference in how these two versions look, thanks to the additional ray tracing options. Ray trace reflections in particular are used a lot in Spider-Man 2. From the characters' suits, building windows and cars, to bronze statues, water surfaces, and even the eyes of all the NPCs. The PS5 version uses ray tracing to generate its reflections as well, but it's not nearly as impressive as what's on display on PC. Just look at how much more of the geometry is reflected in this scene, with the opposite wall being nearly perfectly rendered, along with all the NPCs and their shadows, and most of the environmental surface textures intact. On PS5, you'll notice some incorrect textures, a lack of shadowing at a certain distance, and even broken geometry if it's far enough away. Vehicle reflections are also much more accurate on PC, and help the cars feel that much more realistic. Central Park helps to highlight these changes even better, with more of the trees and bushes showing more clearly in these reflective pools, whereas before, it was just a green blur. There's even ray trace reflections at great distances now, like for the bridges around the island, that previously weren't visible at these same distances. The shadows are also ray traced now, or at least use better ray trace shadowing than before. You'll find shadows are much more accurately rendered, with proper sharp shadows with objects close to the ground, and softer shadows for objects further away. On PS5 Pro, you'll find that most shadows are very soft regardless of the distance. It looks decent by itself, but the added complexity on PC is a big improvement. Signs like this one previously looked as though they had no shadows being cast at all, but they're clear as can be on PC, along with additional shadowing for those brick pieces and ledges that were too soft to notice before. As expected, the shadow draw distance has also been scaled up, which is most evident with NPCs and crowds, and the trees in Central Park. The new ray trace shadows aren't necessarily perfect, as I found areas like this one, with this destroyed building, looked as though there weren't any shadows being rendered at all now. And when viewing these shadow projections up close, there's quite a bit of unusual looking dithering along the edges, depending on the surface. But it's otherwise much better looking on average. Effects were surprisingly not changed all too much this time around. The base alpha effects and layers used for things like fire, explosions, and smoke all seem consistent across versions. Even the water textures are nearly identical, save for the improvements to their reflective quality. However, I did notice a change to particle density, where particles seem to be smaller, but there's a lot more of them, making scenes like the opening battle with Sandman much more impressive. Finally, let's wrap up with a brief sound comparison. Which version do you feel looks and sounds the best?
That guy nearly hit somebody. I better do something.
Spider-Man! Try!
Think you ran? Oh, I gotta be faster next time.
Lost your keys? There's a locksmith up the street. All of you guys are for one armored car? Seems like overkill.
Whip you!
What if instead of stealing you, I don't know, tried to help rescue people?
I hate webs! Here comes the exterminator, Spider! We gotta take him down! Spider-Man's going! You won't last long, Spider! Well, this is just sticky! Oh, it's on, Spider-Man!
Look out! You okay?
Yeah, but I think we found him. Marco!
What the? That's Sandman?
MJ wasn't kidding. We gotta help him before he hurts someone. Or himself. Maybe he's hungry. Should toss the big guy a snack.
What's the plan?
Keep him busy. I got an idea. Oh, crap. Still angry after all these years, Marco? You should try yoga. Must be more of a Pilates guy.
Look out! You okay?
Yeah, but I think we found him. Marco!
That's Sandman?
MJ wasn't kidding. We gotta help him before he hurts someone. Or himself. Maybe he's hungry. Should toss the big guy a snack.
What's the plan?
Keep him busy. I got an idea. Oh, crap. Still angry after all these years, Marco? You should try yoga. Must be more of a Pilates guy.
And that wraps up this episode of Direct Comparison. Overall, Spider-Man 2, despite its numerous technical issues, is a considerable improvement visually over its PlayStation 5 Pro counterpart. The character models have new ray-traced effects that look great. The environments have higher resolution textures and higher LODs. Lighting, while generally consistent, is enhanced greatly by better ambient occlusion, reflections, and shadowing. And the density of particle effects has seen an increase too. What's more, the game can, in theory, achieve vastly superior frame rates, assuming your PC can handle the hefty demand. Right now, frame generation needs some work, and there's some stability issues, especially related to the memory leak that I mentioned earlier. But once all of that's fixed, this will absolutely be the best way to play Spider-Man 2. So, what do you guys think? Do you like the improvements that were made with the PC release? Or do you prefer the game on PlayStation 5 Pro? Let me know in the comments section. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more content like this posted every week.